in there. So, welcome to the next second mentor meeting of the year. And as Josh said, the attendance looks much better here. I appreciate it. This meeting is being recorded. I'm just going to record the audio and whatever's on the slides. So I'm not going to get anything in the chat. I'm not going to get anything that's on the actual meeting itself. But we will publish this one. Before we go any further on that, I want to let everyone know that I recorded a student-facing version of this same presentation, and it is up on the First Alberta YouTube channel. So if any of your students want to, they can check that out, and it walks them through their first meet. So if you have any rookie students or you're a rookie team and you really want to see what that first meet's going to look like, I'm going to definitely, it's already up. It was posted last night, and your students can check that one out directly, because some of the stuff we're going to talk about today is specifically about rosters and registration and stuff that mentors should know. With that being said, here's our agenda for this one. I'm going to throw out here that if anyone has questions while I'm talking, something's not clear, we didn't go over something, there are no stupid questions. Many people are very much new to FTC, and that's all good. There's nothing wrong with that. With that being said, if you have a question, throw it in the chat, and Josh, if you don't mind monitoring the chat, and just throw those things into audio, and we can answer them as we go, and we'll go from there. So the first thing on the agenda here is an ask from Rob Beckner, who was the mentor for GarageBots 18111. Awesome team number. They were a team that was formed over COVID for our remote seasons, if anybody remembers that. And all the members of the team have all since graduated, and Rob has a collapsible field perimeter made out of wood that he would like to donate to a team if anyone's interested. And they also have all of their old FTC parts. He has a list. He'd like to sell some of those at a very significant discount. So if anybody's interested in those ones, I've left his email on here, and it will be in the slides. We'll send these slides out to everybody at the end of the presentation here, and the link to the list works. He put it all in a spreadsheet and kind of what he's got and what he'd like for them. So with that being said, let's talk about your first meet. And everybody has their first meet sometime in the next, I'm going to say month-ish. The earliest one happens on November 16th. The latest one happens on December 1st for your first event. And remember, you're doing 2 meets, and then you're doing a league tournament. So the meets are designed to be stripped-down versions of a full tournament, and the goal is to get your students playing robotics matches in a kind of an early season way here. So the league coordinators, and I know Chad and Dave and a few people have introduced themselves already here. Your league coordinator will reach out to you with a bunch of information about the event a few weeks in advance. I say at least a week before. We endeavor to be better than that, but sometimes logistics are what logistics are. The event information will also be put up on the website on First Alberta. We're working hard to make sure that gets updated effectively, and can go from there. So things like location, where to park, where to come in, anything nearby for food, because we know that's important for lunches and stuff. Some schools have easy access to things, and some schools don't, and it's good to know that before you start up, so that you know if you have to arrange lunch to be delivered or something like that. As well, we're going to talk about have any game update reminders in there if there's anything really pressing or pertinent, and reminders about rosters and safety glasses, which you're about to hear about in this presentation. So this is especially for mentors who are relatively new to FTC. The game manual itself is not a final document. It actually changes throughout the season. And this year we changed the format of how the game manual functions. It used to be we'd have game manual 1, game manual 2, and the Q&A was used to clarify and change things in those manuals. This year we've shifted to more of an FRC style thing, so the first robotics competition, where there's a single game manual, and throughout the season we have team updates. So far there have been 4 team updates that actually change parts of the game manual. Most of them are things like changing how a rule is worded if it's unclear, if maybe they miss something. For example, if any of you have the Studica power switch, it was not legal on September 9th, but it was an omission. It was supposed to be in the game manual. It has since been updated. Those are typically things that aren't really big changes to rules or anything, but they're definitely in there. And the team update's nice because it points out specifically what has changed, not the entire manual. The Q&A is one that you as mentors should definitely be taking a look at, and your students should definitely be taking a look at. These are things where an interpretation of a rule has occurred. I'm gonna pull up my favorite one from last year for those of you that remember Center Stage. Weber Academy put a rule question. No, was it Weber or was it Helios? One of you guys put a rule question in that said, is it legal to have a 25-pound team scoring element, the piece there, because somebody in Edmonton had created a solid metal version of those to make it an obstacle in the course or in the field. It was brilliant, I will add, but it was declared illegal in the Q&A. For safety reasons. The Q&A will talk about things like, the one that I'm currently looking at is where for the level 1 or level 2 and level 3 climb, they're defining what it means to be supported by the submersible. So the idea of, can you be on the submersible and can you lean up against the submersible? Is that supported, or do you have to be fully on top of it? That kind of interpretation question goes in the Q&A. They typically don't answer things like, here's a mechanism, is it legal? No, they're looking for interpretations. So, was it Cyber
One
posted
thing,
the
Nick.
question? Oh yeah, sorry, I do have the chat up.
It wasn't a chat question, but I thought I'd clarify. In last year's game, the Q&A could be used and would override the manual. That is not the case this year. Okay, so nothing in the Q&A is like gospel in a rule until it is posted in a team update and in the manual. That is a change that I think is for the better. So the teams only have to look at the game manual to see all the rules that can apply. As Mitch mentioned, there are lots of interpretations and supporting documentation to help teams understand the rules in the Q&A, but no rule changes there are rules until they get posted in an update in the manual.
Correct. And I'm going to add as a seasoned mentor at this, if you are a team and you know that your robot is in a gray area near the manual, so, or the Q&A, you're right near the edge of something, and you know that you're probably going to have to explain it to an inspector or a referee at an event, print off those Q&A pieces or print off your game manual and highlight those parts, because often when the students are standing in the question box asking the question, they can actually bring those things out and say to the referee, hey, when we saw this in the Q&A, we think our interpretation is correct. That does help sometimes for some of those things. All right, if there's no other questions, Philippe was noting that the 25-pound team element was legal depending on the referee, because that was another part of that interpretation. I like our system this year better. It's we're going to be much more positive. So, registration and team rosters. Everybody has a roster already, or well, has a team already set up in firstinspires.org. You do need to have all of your team members in there to participate in the event. They need to actually sign up with their accounts. Their parents then need to actually go in and check off the consent and release form. And we need to make sure that our team rosters have all of the students listed with green check marks next to them. I actually have this on this slide here. And all of our mentors also need to have those green check marks, and that's for your your consent and release, as well as your YPP screening. So to get the roster that you need to bring to an event, you need to click the button that says printable roster that's on the screen there. That's in your team contacts in First Inspires, and you need to print off that roster. Each event needs a new paper copy of the roster, because teams do sometimes change event to event. We often get questions of, can my student who was on, especially for the places like, I'm thinking like the Weber, Mandela, Aberhart have, 3 or 4 teams. A student was working with one of our teams and then they moved to another team. We'll just move them on the roster. That's easy. No problems, but you do need to submit one for each event that you are in. Paper copies, please. I don't love having a giant inbox full of digital versions, so paper copies make our lives much easier. Thank you. The most common error that happens on this one, if you have students that are struggling with it, is the parents will sometimes go in, they will accidentally create their own account, and they will sign the consent and release for themselves as a volunteer. It's if you're not reading it, reading the headings on the page, it can be a little bit confusing. So if you have a student that swears that their parents checked it off, just have them check that they didn't do that. All right. The next thing when you come to the event is robot inspection, and I'm going to have some requests here, and some of them are logistical and some of them are philosophical. The first one's philosophical. When you go to your, Shane says if they sign up for FRC or FLL instead of FTC. Again, careful reading goes a long way here. So, in robot inspection, which is one of the first things you should do at your event, your team should go and they should get their robot inspection at least started. Excuse me, they should go get inspected, and by that I mean the students should go get inspected. Mentors, you go take a back seat, go enjoy, take some pictures for the social media. It's awesome. You do not need to answer the questions. The robot inspectors will actually ask that you don't answer the questions during the actual robot inspection. The robot inspection sheet this year is now a single document, which is on this page here. It includes the robot and the field inspection. Now there is 2 separate inspection stations at most events. So your students will have to go to robot inspection, and then they'll have to go to field inspection, usually in that order. Robot inspection looks at the physical characteristics of the robot, things like construction rules, are their team numbers made and displayed properly. This year we have to look at maximum expansion. Horizontal expansion is one of the rules. Then they go to field inspection. Then they can pass robot inspection, then field inspection. Field inspection is mostly control system stuff. This is where we remind your drive team about things that they can and cannot do in queue to be ready for their matches, and also to make sure that their software is updated and their password is not password, which is actually illegal in this. So if you, and I don't think I have a picture here, if you go onto the driver hub, the students can click the button that says self-inspect, and it will show a whole bunch of either green check marks or red X's. They want green check marks because that's what the inspectors are looking for. It'll tell you things like if your driver station and your robot are named properly, your passwords are correct, that kind of thing. So, when we run an event, the biggest delay that we ever see is during robot inspection. So I'm going to give you my best piece of advice on this one. When you get to the event, set up your pit, send the team immediately to robot inspection. It doesn't matter if your robot is not ready, all right? You're going to go to the robot inspection, and we're going to go through 90% of the checklist or more in most cases. We're going to find the one or two things that you know are deficient, that they're not ready for, that they maybe need to repair. And that's fine, because when they come back to inspection the second time, the second inspection's real quick. They just look at those two things that they need to repair. So come to the event, set up your pit, go to inspection right away, and then go fix stuff after that. We ask that teams are not using the practice field at the event until they have passed robot inspection. There's really no reason you should be practicing before you've done the inspection. That way we can get started on time. Again, especially with the first event, this is the biggest thing that slows us down in the event and prevents us from getting started, is just getting teams through inspection quickly. So, we've done inspection. Congratulations. I have a whole bunch of green boxes and green check marks to show that every team has checked in and gotten their robot through robot and field inspection. Now we go to the driver meeting. This is something where we're going to get everybody from the drive teams together, and usually the entire team is welcome if they want to. You don't have to send the whole team, but you for sure have to send your drivers, your human players, and your drive coach. Before you ask at the event, the match schedule is handed out at the driver meeting. Not before. It will be printed out and will be handed out at that point. That's something that we get a lot early in the match. Can I know who we're playing? Not yet. Driver meeting. Be there. The head ref at the driver meeting will actually take the microphone and will actually basically walk through the steps of what the referees are expecting for flow of play. That's what they're looking for here. My advice to you, especially those of you that are new mentors, take your driver's schedule or your match schedule, highlight your team's matches, and make sure one of your students is kind of the SAR of making sure that you're on time for your matches. If match 5 is playing, and if you're in match 5 and you're sitting in the pits, you should probably be heading to the queue as soon as match 3 is over, or near when it's over. We usually have one set of queuing tables, so the match before, but we don't want to be waiting for you or going to find you, because in some of our venues, the pits are a little bit of a ways away from the competition field, and that can cause some big delays. Typically in an event, a daytime event, you will have 1 or 2 matches before lunch, depending on timing, and you'll play the rest of your 6 matches after lunch. I'm going to say the caveat to that is the November 29th event in Sturgeon, we're not starting until after lunch. It's a little bit different, so it won't follow that particular piece of information. When your team goes up to queuing, they're going to be handed a lanyard. This is their driver, their human player, their drive coach lanyard. This is to show that they are the team that is supposed to be on the field. One of the other delays we often have at events is them not returning said lanyard. So make sure they go back through queue on their way back and they drop off the lanyard with the queuers. That way we don't have to send runners to go find them. Queuing is a time for strategizing and checking your robot. In an ideal world, you're not repairing your robot in queue. Encourage your students to have the robot ready before they get there, and often this is a point we get where students are madly trying to tighten screws and things like that in queue. It often causes more problems than it solves. As well, students, and this is a rule, not my suggestion, are not allowed to upload or change robot code in queue because, again, that causes more than a few problems. If you are new to FTC, or even if you're a seasoned team, I recommend practicing that whole movement to the field, because we find a lot of teams are completely unprepared for bringing their robot up to the field. And again, that's where a lot of the problems happen, where you have robots that malfunction or a driver station that, won't connect or doesn't work the way it's supposed to. Practicing that goes a long way. Okay. I'm going to take a sip of water here before this one because I get this question at every single event. So I'm going to tell you all about this right now so that you know what it is going in and you can explain it to your students. When you go to your event, there is going to be a scoreboard in the pits that shows everyone's matches and their rankings. Rankings are calculated. Basically, you get 2 points for a win, 1 point for a tie, 0 points for a loss. And the ranking points as they show up on the scoreboard are initially going to go up in 0.2 increments. That's to represent the fact that your unplayed matches are counted as zeros, and it divides the total by 10. So a perfect score in the league is actually a 2.0. That means you've won at least 10 out of the 12 matches you will play in the two meets. So you play 6 matches in the first meet, 6 matches in the second meet. We take your best 10 scores. If you have 10 wins, you have a 2.0 ranking point score. That's as high as you can go on the ranking point side. Often in leagues, we have teams that then go to tiebreaker points. So we have tiebreaker point 1, which is your total autonomous score over all of those 10 matches that we're counting. And then it goes to tiebreaker point 2, which is the end game score. I've yet to see an event where we actually went to tiebreaker point 2, but it is possible. If you get your schedule and a team has an asterisk next to it, has a little star, that means that you are playing as a surrogate team in that match. Basically, you'll play 6 matches, but if you have a surrogate match, you'll play 7. That means that we have an odd number of teams in the event, and obviously everyone has to play 6 matches. You are helping in this case. You're going to be the team that is not counting your score for that particular match, but you might, the score will probably count for the other robots that are on the field. So go be a good team member and a gracious professional and do the best that you can for those ones. All right. Quick reminder. You as an adult mentor in this room may be a drive coach. I'm going to, you can be, or a student can be. I'm going to recommend, and this is usually my first senior mentor in me coming out, that if you have a really, really young team, there's nothing wrong with having an adult drive coach. We've seen many of those happen, especially with the young teams that need some guidance. But as they get older, it's sometimes beneficial to have the students take on that particular responsibility. The referees are relatively friendly people in our events, and so encourage your human players to ask them if they're unsure about an interpretation, when and where they can stand, kneel, place things, that sort of thing. I find the events I've refereed personally, having that dialogue is really helpful to make sure that the event and the game flows particularly well. So tell your drive teams to, especially your human players, to introduce themselves to the referees. When the game is done, your team needs to wait for the all clear before they step into the field, before they actually remove anything. Just drill this into your kids. Listen to the field staff. They will give clear directions as to what they are supposed to do, and don't jump the gun on those things. The field, as well as the pits, by the way, are a safety glasses zone. So drive teams members need to have their safety glasses at all times. Just for anyone who's unsure, because my team had problems with this one year, the tinted safety glasses are not allowed, but colored safety glasses are now. So if you have them slightly blue or red or yellow or whatever, but you can't have sunglasses on while there, because the referees need to make eye contact, potentially to tell you to, disable your robot or stop driving in the corner or stop running into that opponent. They'll get a warning or two before they start penalizing things field side for safety glasses, but I know our referees get really, really unhappy about this. Let's go with that. Excuse me. Those of you that were here for the mentor meeting last week or last month, you guys had the conversation about the volunteer hours that we're putting in place for next year to try to help out some teams with their entry fees. So meets don't require as many volunteers as a league tournament, for example. However, there are some student tasks that can be done. So if you have one of those teams that has like 15 students on it and you have people who don't have anything to do and you want them to help out with the event, you can. Get them to go on First Inspires and they click on the volunteer tab, and then they can go in and sign up as field reset, queuers, or runners. These are kind of the low non-training volunteer roles that we can take a student to do. They don't have any conflict of interest behind them. They're pretty straightforward, but they're integral to making the event run. Excuse me. Field reset is just the people to put the parts back on the field. Queuers are usually in charge of making sure everyone's in line when they're supposed to be, and the runners are the ones who go find you when you're not in line when you're supposed to be. If you have students that are interested in emceeing, please have them reach out to your league coordinators. That's one where we can't have just anybody picking that up. We have to have somebody who's going to run the event effectively, but we've had relatively good success with having students be MCs and game announcers in the past, so I'm going to leave that one open if anyone has that student who you know would be really good at that particular role. As well, volunteers, parents, alumni, and supporters are also eligible for those volunteer pieces as well. So if you have parents or alumni who want to help out at these events, especially events that are not in your league, that can be something that's really, really powerful for understanding how FTC works. They can sign up on firstinspires.org just like everyone else. As an adult volunteer, you do need to pass the YPP screening, so you need to do the same thing that all of us as mentors have done, and then you can sign up for other roles. Typically, we ask that people like robot inspectors, score trackers, scorekeepers, and referees don't volunteer at events that their kids or their past teams are in. Though if you think there's a conflict of interest, please have them reach out to the league coordinators because we can clarify that. Your robot inspectors and referees typically should have some FTC experience. That helps, especially with robot inspection, so that we don't have to explain what all the parts are. But if you have somebody who's just keen and wants to be a score tracker, we can train them on how to use the tablet to score an FTC match pretty quickly and pretty effectively. February, and I'm going to talk about Calgary specifically here, we have a whole bunch of events in Calgary. So if you have any parents who, especially who work in STEM fields, who want to volunteer, please encourage them to sign up. We are going to try to draw on some of our sponsors first for our volunteers for judges. That usually works a little better to avoid conflicts of interest and things like that. But we would love to have a bit of a pool of people to draw upon for those type of things, especially given the number of events we have in Calgary in February. I know you guys are all preparing for 1 or 2 events, but between FTC and FLL, we've got, I think, 5 different tournaments in February going on. So it's going to be a busy month. With that being said, our next mentor meeting is in about a month here, and we're going to be talking about Dean's List interviews and what goes on with that. Judging in December, just in time for you to get some engineering portfolios ready for the league tournaments. And then we'll talk about tournament information in January before the league tournaments and the last chance qualifier. And then finally, Alberta Championship in February for the rest of our schedule. This info's all up on the First Alberta website right now. And with that, I've gone through the entire spiel I put together here. So if anyone wants to unmute and ask a question, you're more than welcome to. If you want to post it in the chat, we'll read it out for you. That's all good. And we're happy that you're all here. Again, thank you for attending the mentor meeting. I hope it was informative and you learned something you didn't know. And we'll open the floor to questions.
I've got a question about the expanding size. Can you control, if you can control the size by code of a lift system, but in theory it can go larger, so we can prove.
Yeah, I can answer that, Bobby.
Yeah.
So as long as your team can demonstrate an inspection that the robot will or is programmed to not exceed those bounds, that works as a control.
Perfect. That was what I thought. Just making sure.
Yeah. So we gotta check.
And thanks, guys.
Mark, I can answer that question. The FTC Live score is available outside of official events. You can actually run your own tournament. If you need the link, if you can't find the link, email Josh or myself, and we'll send it to you so you can actually run the scoring system. I can't remember if the scoring system for the browser version is still available in some past years, but I know that you can definitely download the desktop version of FTC Live, which is the scoring system.
Yeah, I will preface that with it's not the most user-friendly thing in the world, but it will work.
If you guys just want to have the scoring element for your own team to practice, it's also available online on the scoring system. So you just have to sign up with Lead Mentor 1 or Lead Mentor 2, and you go under your team name, and then there's a score calculator. So you will see exactly the same thing as the score tracker is seeing on their tablet, and it will give you the score for your team. So if you have 2 teams, you just need to open 2 of those, and then you can score both sides of the field.
Was that on the official scoring website?
Yep.
I haven't seen that in a little while.
I think you just posted it.
I just posted the link to that in the chat if anyone's looking for that. Okay. Katrina says, how many teams total in FTC Alberta? How many would roll it into 3 teams going to Worlds instead of 2? I'll leave that one to you, Philippe.
Okay. Well, right now we have 2 teams moving forward, and we will know December 1st is when First is taking their snapshot. of all the teams registered in all around everywhere. So make sure that everyone that you know sign up on First Inspires as soon as they can, because on December 1st, they take that snapshot and they will allocate those spots. So we should know the first week or second week of December how many spots we have for World, but we won't before that.
And for those in the audience here who are brand new mentors, the advancement is you're first trying to advance to the Alberta Championship. This is through your league tournament in late January or early February. You get another shot at your last chance qualifier, and then the top 2 teams from Alberta in that Alberta Championship get an advancement to Worlds. So it's always a good question of figuring out how that works.
I'm also gonna step in here a little bit and answer the question of how many teams do we have in Alberta right now. So as of today, I think we're sitting around 102 in Alberta total. That could change a little bit. We're not setting our advancement for Alberta Championship until around meet 1, as that's when we should know final numbers on how many teams are going to be registered in the province. But that's kind of where we're at right now.
And on that number, only 69 are fully registered with First.
Yes.
So that's why people need to sign up with First, because the number registered with First, December 1st, is the one that moves us forward. So if we want to have a third team going up, we need to make sure that we get that number as high as we can.
I have a question about maximum team size. I saw posted on the Q&A a couple of days ago, actually. Someone noticed that the 15 max team members is now not in the competition manual. Is that correct?
So this was always a soft number. So first recommend no more than 15, because if you get more than 15, the students don't get enough out of it. But they always said to allow more than 15 to be part of a team. The only thing is, if you're showing up at an event and you win an event, don't expect to have a medal for every student. At the most, it will be 15.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions here? For those of you that don't know me, this is where we do the Dora the Explorer thing, and I count to 10 in my head, and then I answer my own question. Well, if there's no questions, we'll call the mentor meeting adjourned. We'll end the recording here. And if anyone has anything not necessarily related to this, I know a couple people had questions about hosting events here that they wanted to stick around for. We can absolutely stick around after this and have those conversations. So recording has ended on my part here, Philippe.